Welcome to the Descenso Zone podcast, where we talk about creativity and personal growth through a lens of curiosity and humor. My guest today is a viral culinary innovator and snack food influencer with over 200,000 followers on TikTok. Known as the Paella King, he's reinvented the iconic Spanish dish into bold experiments, including his viral Kit Kat Paella. We talk about his journey to becoming a social media influencer, the challenges, perks, and strategies around content creation as a career, collaborating with major food and beverage brands, and much more. Now, let's get into the zone with Dre Pao. Dre, it's been a long time. It's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it. I've seen your journey for the past few years, and it's awesome to reconnect and excited to hear what you got going on.
Yeah, likewise. I know you're a snack influencer and a digital strategist, but your coolest title is the Paella King, which is a very unusual job title, but one that you get to be creative, not just with the content you make, but also with the really cool food recipes you come up with. So I got to start with the big question, the burning question I have for you, Dre. What's your top 3 snacks?
Ooh, that is a big one. Okay, but top 3 snacks of all time. For me, if you remember So Delicious in the 90s, that's the ultimate candy for me that is discontinued, but like the best of all time.
I remember it, yes.
That was like recess. If your parents put that in the lunch bag, you're like the holy grail of snacks. So that's number 1. Number 2, I go chocolate. Wonder Bar is my go-to because it's got everything. It's got crunch, it's got caramel, it's the perfect chocolate bar. And then I'm trying to do like chocolate, candy, and then chip. And then for me, it's got to be all dressed chips.
All
I don't know
dressed.
if that's basic, but that's the ultimate chip for me.
No, I love an all dressed chip. Although correct me if I'm wrong, but I hear that's like a Canadian thing. Is it not?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Wonder Bar maybe as well. There might be a version of it in the UK, but it's called something different.
Okay. Yeah, I've never tried a Wonder Bar.
That's amazing. You got to. That's homework after the podcast.
I'm writing that down. What about your favorite 3 things maybe that you've made? Because I know you do a lot of really unique kind of recipes and mashups. Is there anything that comes to mind in terms of the top 3?
Totally. I mean, as I've, from originally doing snack content in Canada, US, and then transitioning content into Spanish content, a lot of my recipes you'll see going from reviewing stuff into, making it in the kitchen. A lot of my recipes have a Spanish twist to them. So I would say that one of my favorites to make and to actually taste was a chocolate paella, which for me is like a rice pudding. If you know rice pudding, it was very similar to that. But when I created that, that was apparently crazy and controversial to Spanish people, and I was like, oh, this actually just was an experiment, something that I thought tasted good.
That was the Kit Kat one?
Yeah, that was the Kit Kat paella.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that looked good.
So that's one of my favorites, I would say, and it tastes good. Like I actually could like see someone making it and being like, oh yeah, obviously it's a dessert, because when people think paella, they're like, I'm assuming it's rice, so it's like a lunch or a dinner. But no, I mean, obviously with chocolate, it's supposed to be a dessert. And then it's funny, all the things I'm thinking of are probably strange to the average Canadian person, or they don't even know what they are. Like if you see the marinara like tapas thing, it's super popular in the region of Spain that I'm in. So I've done a bunch of different versions of that just because it's so popular here. So I did one with Takis that taste-wise is so good. And because I love Takis, actually the blue Takis remind me of all dressed chips. So it has that like vinegary texture to it. So that's number 2. And then the third one is probably, I did a Big Mac Spanish omelet that was like, I was like, people would buy this. If this was at McDonald's, I feel like people would buy it. It's just potato omelet with basically everything you find in a Big Mac. The meat, the lettuce, the pickles, the sauce. That was prime.
Yeah, I saw that one too, and I was like, ooh, that looks good. I'm going to put some links in the description so people can find you and can see these cool recipes and stuff that you're talking about, because I think your videos are so fun and so engaging. Like you have really high energy, the editing is great, your personality really comes through, and you have like a really clear snack niche. So I think your stuff is really awesome. I just wondered like what the initial attraction was. Like, how did you go from what you were doing before to hitting post on your first snack influencer video?
Yeah. So I feel like my first like pursuit of content actually was in music, like trying to like make songs and that sort of thing. And I feel like the transition into snacks happened, I'd say the big jump was COVID because TikTok was taking off. I had a TikTok profile and I was like, well, I have a bunch of time because I'm stuck in the house. What's something different I could try? And everyone was like into food and cooking and all that sort of stuff during COVID. So that was my big jump, I would say, into really making content around snacks. So I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna review as much snacks and candy as I can stuck in the house. And that's where it really kind of took off in terms of people seeing the content. TikTok was also this like new animal that people were jumping into. So it was kind of right time, right moment. And then a handful of years ago, I wanted something new. I love Canada, but I did feel like I wanted a new adventure, and it was the right time in my life to do it. So I had a history of visiting Spain. You know, I have friends in Spain, so I was like, let's just dive into Spain. And I didn't know how long I planned on staying there, but I saw this visa for digital businesses, and I was like, oh, that's cool. This I fit in this. Let's try it. And going to Spain was what inspired kind of the transition into content because all of a sudden I didn't have plans at the time, but I arrive in Spain, all of a sudden I'm in a very Spanish part of Spain. It's not like everyone's speaking English. So I was like, okay, well, should I be adjusting the content to be in Spanish? And then the snacks I'm reviewing originally were Canada, US, and everyone around me had no idea what they were. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll do the Spanish thing. And as I got older, I feel like the more I got into my 30s, the candy aspect felt, a little bit not childish because I feel like there's a child in all of us sort of thing, but I wanted a little bit more of a mature vibe to my content in a way. And I always liked being in the kitchen. So I was like, oh, let's whip up different versions, incorporating some of these influences from, the candy and snacks into new recipes with a Spanish touch because I'm surrounded by it anyway. And that's where you get this weird Paella guy from Hamilton kind of mixture.
It's
Probably the only one who's doing that.
it's a really cool mashup, and I totally get this idea of like, wanting to make the content more mature because the candy thing feels like a little youthful. But at the same
Yeah,
time, I'm like, dude, I would kill for some So Delicious right now. Like, I'm 35 years old.
same.
I would love some, I would love some So Delicious. I had Dunkaroos recently for the first time in like many, many years, probably since I was a kid. And I was like, oh, just doesn't hold up in the same way. Maybe they've changed it or like shrinkflation has like affected it or something. But I remember loving Dunkaroos and being like a little disappointed as an adult. So if you can keep that like childlike joy for some of those candies and some of those desserts, I mean, all the power to you.
It comes into, and I'm sure you know this as well, is when you start something, it's exciting, and then you realize with the content, the volume you need to do. So I mean, with TikTok, especially with COVID, there were days I was doing like 10 videos in a day. So it was like high volume content. At the beginning, you're pumped, but then you're doing so many candies and snacks in a day that it's easy to get burnt out and be like, okay, I want something different. But I didn't miss a post for a year and a half. I posted every day, and
Wow.
that really saw the growth. I saw probably the largest growth in that period, and I'm grateful for it, but it wasn't sustainable. And I feel like that also played a role in kind of the transition is just I got sick of that. And I was like, for the content that's being produced, I want people to see me enjoying it because I feel like you can only fake it for so long. So yeah, I wanted to kind of mature the content, and here we are.
That's really interesting. I want to get into this idea of like influencer growth and strategy around building your social media presence and your following, because I think a lot of people would like to do that. I think there's a lot of creators who put creative content out into the world and would like to see their subscriber count grow. They would like to see some income start to come in from that channel. So I'm really interested in how you did it because you have over 200,000 followers on TikTok. You have millions of likes. You have tons of views. And so this idea of posting consistently, you said 10 a day sometimes. I mean, that seems really intense and really committed. Do you think that's what it takes to really build a following early on?
I mean, I think it's also, I think yes and no in the sense of the more you post, I think the more like chances you get of something hitting. So 10 was just me throwing 10 darts and one or two of them hitting. But I do think there's an aspect of luck where I know people who are posting once every 3 days and they've grown their following, hundreds of thousands of followers. So I think it's a bit of everything. I think I saw Mr. Beast. I'm going to butcher this, but the idea is going to be there. He said something about like the purple cow theory of like creating a concept that if it was a regular cow, you'd never think about it again. But if you saw a purple one, you'd always tell everyone about it and it'd stick in your head. So I think as I've grown, I've realized the concept is the king of everything. If you can create something different and unique, even if you post once or twice about it, it might be more valuable than posting 10 times. So I think that's where I've shifted is if I was starting today, I would think more, how can I do something unique and different? Because it's even more saturated than when I started. Like on TikTok, I was early to TikTok, but if you're starting on TikTok today, it's like everyone has a TikTok. Everyone wants to be a content creator. So I would say like, hey, what can I do that's really out there? And that's for me, when I came to Spain, I was like, let's make the craziest Spanish dishes that someone can think of. And for me, they're really original.
Oh, they're super original. In a way, your purple cow is like the Kit Kat paella because like no one's ever done that before, and it's a unique new thing. So people are watching that and like being surprised and probably confused a little bit at the beginning, but then like intrigued because it actually looks really good. So it's like
Totally.
that's sort of your eye-catching, your hook, I guess, if you want to use content creator terms. Um,
Yeah.
so you would say like the hook is probably the most important over consistency.
I mean, you do need the consistency. I think 10 a day, I think sustainability is more important than the consistency. If you think you can do 10 a day and feel enthusiastic about it and keep it going, then, do 10 a day. But I do think the average person is probably going to burn out at 10. So I would say, hey, if you're comfortable at one every 3 days, but you know you can do it forever, or you're like, hey, for the next year, I could totally keep this up. I think that consistency with creative ideas is what I would suggest. But at the end of the day, I think everyone's got to try out what works for them because I think of it like working out with social media. Like you can tell someone how you got a six pack and they could copy you exactly and it just won't give them the same results and you can copy it identically. And I think it's the same thing for social. So taking bits and pieces from everyone is what I think I did as well, trying to take inspiration from people, make it my own and put it out there. At the end of the day, the people decide if they like it. I mean, the algorithm's just responding to people. So if people find it interesting, the algorithm will let you know.
Yeah, I want to get into the algorithm a little more and maybe unpack some insights you might have from having so much experience working with algorithms. First of all, I want to ask, like, I noticed TikTok seems to be your biggest platform. Are you on other platforms as well, or are you mainly focusing on TikTok? I know you're on Instagram and YouTube and stuff, but it seems like TikTok is your real bread and butter.
Yeah, I would say it's my largest following, so I tend to, focus on it a little more. But yeah, Instagram, I'm there. I do have YouTube, but I would say Instagram and TikTok are my main platforms. But I would say, because so many people say, hey, should I post on all of them? And my suggestion is always, it doesn't hurt to post the same thing on all of them. If you have time to edit all of them and adjust them for the platform, each platform is a little bit different, but most people don't have the time to just be doing that. So it's better to post something than nothing is something that I always say.
Yeah, it's incredibly time consuming, even just in my limited experience with this podcast, creating the podcast, creating the materials for the podcast, filming the podcast, editing the podcast, cutting it up into little shorts and posting it on all of the platforms and doing all of that stuff is incredibly time consuming. And I enjoy it. And it's something that I'm getting a lot of learning value out of. Like I'm learning so much about analytics and the algorithm and thumbnails and all of this stuff. It's a real learning curve and a learning experience for me. But I can totally see how it would be exhausting and a burnout a recipe for burnout because there's just it's endless. It's so much. And it's also a never ending sort of hunger for new content, right? So it's like you're constantly having to come up with new stuff, constantly having to create. How do you get past that? Like mentally, do you put pressure on yourself to create on a consistent basis like that?
I think everyone goes through different phases. I did at the beginning. Like I said, for 1 minute, I didn't miss a day. And if I was close to missing a day, it like would affect my health, that I would be stressing like I got to get something up. It's 10 p.m. and I would just put something together and get it out there. But I more as time has gone on, I've tried to focus on what actually makes me happy. And I feel like some people don't, that's not a priority, if that makes sense. But I feel like maybe as I've gotten older, I'm like, you know what? I would rather focus on what makes me feel good than what I feel like I have to do. But I don't know. I think it will depend on what sort of results you're looking for. I think at the beginning I was looking for followers and all this like proof of concept. And the thing that I'm always creating content for is more so these days proof of concept to the brands I work with. Because I would say the main thing that's my income is working with brands and helping them build their actual brand. So I work with a lot of brands, team of creators, coming up with different concepts and helping them build their strategies. And my profile is more proof of concept to prove to them like, hey, actually, I'm still, in the trenches. I still understand. I'm still creating content on a consistent basis. But by doing this, I felt less pressure to have more and more followers, have more and more views. Because if I was pursuing the like influencer game, then you have to chase that because that's the way you're making your money. Because brands are like, who's hot, who's doing well, who has the most views, and then they're just hiring project by project based on that. So maybe adjusting what my goals were as well is what helped me take that pressure off.
Yeah, you work with a lot of great brands, and I want to get into that whole side of it with the brands and the monetization and how people can sort of leverage attention to monetize. But I want to just take a quick step back because you said something that I just wanted to touch on. So this idea of changing your mindset around this kind of grind and hustle of releasing consistently to doing things that just sort of made you happy. Dre, what makes you happy?
That's the golden question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I think it's always changing for people, but when I say that, I'm referring specifically to at the beginning. I suppose the goal is like you want lots of followers, which is like a form of fame and attention and that sort of thing with your socials. And then for me, it was like all I want to do is make a living doing something creative. And when you just take that pressure off of like, oh, I need all these followers, I need all of this attention online, and you simplify the goal, for me it was that, then I was able to think clearer. And you're actually like, okay, step one, let's try this. If that doesn't work, let's try this. And then it becomes sort of like views, just throwing the darts and seeing what connects. And once something works, doing more of that. But yeah, that was my happiness, was doing something creative with social that brought in an income.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of people land. That's certainly where I feel like I've landed. I mean, I used to make on this very channel, I used to make comedy videos, and I still do sometimes, but the goal at the beginning when we started making these like 10 years ago was more like, let's get attention, let's blow up and make these comedy videos. And a couple of videos did well and a bunch of them didn't. But that was always sort of the driving factor behind it. And now, as I've gotten a little older and maybe matured just a little bit, I think it's kind of where you ended up as well, where it's like, I just want to do something creative. I want to put things out into the world that can provide value to people, and also have fun doing it. And that's sort of where I landed with this podcast. And that's why I'm really enjoying talking to all these creative people and learning about their stories. And that's why I wanted to talk to you as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'm actually curious to ask you a question, because you have something to your story that I didn't have, which was you had such early success
Mm.
young. And I feel like I didn't have a taste. I didn't even, when I was younger, I was not thinking about content that didn't even exist really. For you, it was more television. So I'm curious how your early success, how did that impact you as you got older? Because and I don't know for sure, but I imagine TV is similar to content where you have your ups and downs. One day you're like at the top and everything's going amazing, and then the next day it seems like everything disappears and it's this up down thing. But having that at, I don't know, how old were you when you started? And then I guess tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, I started in theater when I was 10, but then I didn't really get onto television. I guess I was like maybe 12 when I started doing, I did a YTV show called Super Rupert. And then I did a couple of films. And then really it was when I was like 14, 15, 16 that I did Naturally Sadie, which was kind of where I got most of the notoriety from. And it was an amazing experience. But to your point, yes, it does sort of impact how you think about success in the future because especially in Canada, it's like you can be an actor who's successful, but like you're not making US kind of money. So it's not like you can just like retire, if you work on, if you're Hillary Duff on her Disney Channel show, she could probably just coast. It's like you
Totally.
can't do that. You still have that pressure of like, what's the next thing? And for me, I ended up pursuing stand up for a little bit, exploring that, and then learning that most of my jokes were just me having a conversation with myself and like acting out both roles. And then I realized, oh, I'm just writing scenes. And then from that, that's how I sort of transitioned into the TV writing side of things. But it definitely added a layer of pressure because I was like, well, if I was successful at 16, successful, I guess everyone has a subjective version of that. But to me, I was doing well at 16. And then it became much, much harder after university to attain that same level of success, I guess you might say. And so it does affect you. It makes you think like, am I doing something wrong? Should I have continued to pursue this or pursue that? But at the end of the day, I think you just have to, and this is maybe a tough way to look at it, but you just have to get over it. I mean, that was just something that I did and I'm super proud of. But you have to move forward. You have to keep doing the next thing. You have to keep finding the next project. And for me, that was writing. And now this podcast is part of that too, because it's just another way to express yourself. It's another way to connect with people. And I think that's really all I wanted to do. I mean, part of my favorite part of working on shows like Naturally Sadie was the connection I had with the crew and the cast because you became such a family. You're working together all day, every day. And that kind of camaraderie and relationship is something that I really feel like I missed after sort of leaving that world. And so getting back into the creative, especially after COVID too, it's like everyone is so isolated and just reconnecting with people in this way has been really powerful way to like get some of that back.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's that was a huge reset for a lot of the creative industries, I would say for sure. But I would imagine with your experience, everything you said is emotions I feel like I have had, but I imagine it would be more difficult just because I feel like you had them earlier in life and you didn't have the maturity you have today, probably. When I was, going through TikTok stress, I was much older than 15 or 16. Whereas if you had to deal with it then, maybe you didn't have, enough self awareness to be like, hey, okay, like it's okay, next step, that sort of thing. So it's bound to impact you as a creator now. And I imagine it just helps you, not dwell as much as you would have if you hadn't experienced that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think there's always room to grow and keep improving, but it is a difficult thing. And I think this is why so many child actors deal with challenges around substance abuse and other issues. It's because you see yourself from a very young age when you're not mature and when your prefrontal cortex is still figuring itself out. And you see this trajectory for yourself where you're like, well, I'm on this uptick. And then, that sort of fizzles and maybe it goes down a little bit or maybe it flatlines. And you're like, well, this isn't good. And then there is definitely like some degree of stress and anxiety around that and a lot of imposter syndrome. It's something we talk about on this podcast a lot because I speak to a lot of creatives, and you feel like, am I good enough? Am I doing the right thing? And those thoughts percolate. Those thoughts percolate even now for me. But I think you have to have some degree of just maturity that lets you push through and try things and be okay with failing. And I think for me, the acting and the writing has really helped with that, because as an actor, you're auditioning hundreds of times, you're failing 99.9% of the time. As a writer, I've pitched dozens of projects. I've spent tons of time writing and perfecting scripts that went nowhere. And so this idea of rejection, has come up time and time again on this podcast, but it's really like rejection therapy. And that actually hardens you in a way. It cauterizes the wounds so that you can just keep pushing forward, at least for me.
No, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there for me as well, because it's an industry where rejection is definitely forever. And I think so is imposter syndrome. I saw a clip of Paul McCartney talking about imposter syndrome, and I was like, if he still has imposter syndrome, there's no help, like there's no hope for anyone, sort of thing.
Right.
And but I think that's just to learn that it's all a part of that, right? It's a part of the journey, and reminding yourselves what's important. And I think having conversations like this, having people around you that understand what you're going through, makes it a lot easier.
It's also challenging because, on social media, as I'm sure you know, it's like you only get the shiniest, best side of everyone. So it's like you don't see that sort of more vulnerable side. And I think that's kind of why podcasts have blown up in the way they have in the last few years, because you get these long form conversations where people are more open to talking about that kind of stuff and talking about the challenges that they face, and not just, showing the Lambo that they drive in on Instagram. Right. And so for me, that was part of it. It was like, I want to get into the weeds and have these real kind of conversations that are sometimes difficult, and push the envelope a little bit and just find out what's really going on under the hood, especially with these creative people who live these precarious lives. I mean, if you're an artist or a singer or really a TikTok snack influencer, there's no guarantees, right? Like it's really on your shoulders to make it happen.
Totally. And I think that's where it comes back to always checking yourself and being like, okay, what's the goal? Why am I doing this? And am I actually doing something at least a little bit every day to get closer to where I actually want to go? Because it's so easy to get distracted with creative stuff, because you could be like doing something towards your goal, and then you see someone else doing this and you're like, oh, that's cool. Maybe should I do that? That looks fun. And then I feel like a lot of creatives, we have this personality of like, we like doing multiple things, that it's easy to compare ourselves or derail us from where we wanted to go originally, that we forget the whole original intention. So checking yourself, I think, has been really helpful, but still something that I fail at, still something that, like, you struggle with. But I do think that having someone in your life or having a group of friends to support you is like a huge thing, because it puts you on check. They remind you, I have a really good group of friends. I have my fiance, and good reminders of like, hey, don't you remember you did this, this, and this like a month ago? Like, don't be so down on yourself. And you're like, oh, okay, true. I forgot about that. Like,
Yeah, remembering not to be hard on yourself is something I struggle with a lot. I think a lot of creative people struggle with that, though, because that weight is on their shoulders. It's like you forget, like, hey, I just won this award, or I just did this performance, or I just did this thing. And it's like, cool, but what's the next thing? Like, it's hard for you to like take a moment to be like, appreciate that, because you're always just chasing the dragon. There's always another thing, right?
yeah, I think so.
I wanted to ask about your relationship with the analytics. Like, are you looking at analytics of your videos and using it to shape your content at all? Like, does TikTok give you those specific, like I know on YouTube, you can really see detailed analytics in terms of who's watching, what country they're from, how long they watched. Are you using any of that to shape your content?
I would say earlier on, I obsessed over it a little more. And I'd say with clients, it's something I'm a lot deeper into, especially because obviously clients who are paying you are a little bit more mathematical with everything you're doing. So I feel like that's the most experience I have with analyzing the analytics. I think the main thing that I usually look for is watch time with all of my content. At the end of the day, I'm trying to create content that's memorable and that people are going to want to share and use to communicate a sense of relatability with their friends or their whoever's following them. And so I feel like number one, TikTok or Instagram, these platforms, number one, will give you organic reach. So if you see that the views you're getting organically are above average compared to your other videos, then that for me alone is enough of a signal without getting into the weeds of all the, I'm trying to like simplify it as much as possible. And looking at it from a macro sense, I think a lot of people are so obsessed with like every single video and every week they'll go and look at their analytics. But what I'll do with a client, for example, is I will say, okay, 6 months is our trial, and I'm just testing for 6 months. And I only want to work with people who see my content, trust me, and let me do my thing with it. And I'm lucky that I have that where first 6 months, we're just throwing darts and I'm testing different creative concepts. Then when we have this pool of content, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, your average views are around 5,000, let's say, but these 10 videos here got 30,000 or 20,000. Okay, these are a sign that these are our standouts. What do these have in common? And then I'll analyze them. Do the hooks have something in common? Is the topic? Is it the text or the hook that we used? And that's, I would say, my main strategy of looking at it. But again, more than anything, whether it's for my content or clients, I'm trying to think of the most outside of the box piece of creative that I can put together. And then I look at the organic reach over anything as a sign that people like this, and so does the algorithm.
You've worked with some really big brands, KFC, McDonald's, Subway. I wonder when you're working with these brands, are you developing content with them that you put on your channel? Like, are you reviewing? I know you have like some review videos. So like, are you like reviewing a bag of Doritos for Doritos, or are you going to like McDonald's and helping them with their team create content for their own socials?
Totally. So I would say 90% of the relationships start with them seeing my content and being like, hey, can you post something on your page? A lot of those, fast food brand relationships started like that. So if you look at my early snack stuff, it's me reviewing like the latest burger release or whatever, the new edition that they have for a limited time. And then those relationships did evolve into the back end building stuff for them. And going back to my goals of, hey, what do I want? I just found that there was more sustainability, more consistency in working on their strategies, because a lot of the influencer stuff tends to be project based or promotional based. And that is less predictable. And when you're a creator, I feel like that's what we're all craving. It's just that consistency, that a little bit of predictability would be nice in the life of a creative, I feel like. So I saw that opportunity and tend to take those relationships that way, because at the end of the day, it's also a ton of value for them. I'm trying to show my clients, hey, you could be the influencer, and then working with other influencers is just gravy. But I think that's where a lot of brands struggle is they rely on other influencers or creators to help build their brand. And then you go to the brand profile and it has no personality. It's just ads. It's just promos. And that's basically where I've been for the last few years, I would say. And what I'm trying to transition to here in Spain, the same reason I started doing some of these crazy videos was to go viral, get the attention of brands. So they're like, who's this guy causing a lot of noise? And then when I'm actually with them, they're like, oh, he's not this crazy Canadian trying to destroy our culture. He actually has a mindset behind it. And let's see how he can help us. And that's what's been transitioning here in Spain as well. So that's kind of the mindset behind it.
So when you're approached by a brand and it started in that initial way where they were just kind of like, hey, can you post stuff for us? They are, I guess, paying you to do those posts. And then how does that relationship evolve into like more of the brand side? And then also, sorry, another question. How do you keep the authenticity of your channel if you're being paid to promote a brand? Like if you didn't like the burger, are you allowed to say that?
Technically, I mean, I have never luckily I've never had a product that I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like
Right.
if I faced that, I think it would be a bit of a challenge because you don't want to lose the trust of your audience, obviously.
Yes.
But yeah, they are hiring you with the expectation that you're going to paint their product in a positive way. And I know creators who are very firm who say, I'm going to be honest. So just whatever you give me, just know that. Um, in general, I was always pretty friendly with my review stuff. And I would say the straight up review content was also early in my like content career. So I was also trying to build relationships and make these brands actually want to talk to me sort of thing. So I was pretty friendly on those reviews. But once I would do a video, there are some brands who I wouldn't hear from them again or we wouldn't talk again. But I would go, okay, they're hired by me. They're hiring me. And then I would keep that relationship going online, engaging with their content. And what I found the most was the more I engaged with them, the more they'd hire me again. But the best connection I would have is trying to meet whoever these decision makers are in person. And trade shows was like my go-to. I would say I built the majority of my consistent business and clients through going to some of these trade shows and being one-on-one with these decision makers because at the end of the day, we tend to invest in people we like and people we trust and people that will make our jobs easier. And basically, what I wanted to show them is, hey, I get what you're doing. You're making a product, you're trying to promote it. I have creative ideas. All you have to do is hire me and I'll take care of it and I'll give you a product you don't have to worry about. There's no homework for you. And that was mainly done, I think, through one on one conversation. Trade shows was a huge thing for building my business.
That's so interesting. Yeah, the in-person one-on-one conversation is, or at least has been, sort of a dying breed, and so much of it is online these days. And I do think there's a lot of power in seeing someone face to face. I think that that kind of business is how deals used to be done all the time. And, just sending an email or having a Zoom meeting isn't the same. It just doesn't give you that same trust.
And it's oversaturated now, like especially after COVID. Everyone's sending a DM, everyone's saying sending an email trying to work with someone. And even though these trade shows for all these different businesses, I'm sure there's some for film and for television as well. Even though they're quite large, the amount of people from our generation that go, at least from my perspective, is still not at its peak. Like still when I go to these trade shows, it tends to be very Gen X, very baby boomer. And I think it's a huge opportunity for people who want to make that transition from content creator to digital business. I think it's still very underutilized.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, admittedly, I haven't been to many trade shows in the TV and film industry, but I totally buy that that's true. I think there's a tendency for younger people to turn away from that kind of stuff and live more online. I'm not sure what that is. I mean, it could be influenced by COVID, could be influenced by a number of things, but I know even like phone calls are intimidating in some ways to younger people, whereas the older generations like need a phone call. Like they're intimidated by the email or they're intimidated by the Instagram DM. So it's a really interesting disconnect there between the generations. And if you can cross that gap, I agree there could be a lot of untapped potential there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder, have you ever turned down a deal with a brand? Has there ever been something that you were like, I don't actually agree with this, or I don't like this, or
Totally. Energy drinks. I've
energy
turned
drinks?
down, especially early on, my audience was very young. I feel like it's expanded since then, the more I've done like cooking stuff. But there was a point on TikTok, I would say when I had about 100,000 followers, I would say the majority were under 20. And so I felt like I had this responsibility. I'm like, I'm promoting these products. I'm okay with like a little bit of sugar, a little bit of unhealthy stuff. I think it's, a parent's responsibility to teach moderation and police that. But products like energy drinks for me, I just think aren't healthy. Even for adults, to be honest, like me at my age now, I have an energy drink and my heart's pounding. So I'm like, I can't promote this. So I've turned down a number of energy drink. I didn't even know what the budget was, to be honest. We never got that far. My answer was always sorry, I just don't consume the product, so it's hard for me to promote it.
Yeah, that's really commendable of you. I think you have to stand on your morals to some degree, and if that's just not something that you would use, then I agree. I don't think you should promote it. I'm quite early in the podcast, so the brand deals that I have are me trying to sell my own little children's book that I wrote. If you're enjoying this podcast, do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button. Another way you can support me is to check out my kids' book. It's called Tiffy and Spiffy Meet a Kangaroo. It's a really sweet story about two preschooler best friends. One is a girl, one is a genie, and they go on magical adventures. It's on Amazon, and there is a link in the description. Please go check it out. And now, let's get back into the zone. But other than that, I don't have brand deals yet. But if I ever were to get some brand deals or anyone wanted to sponsor the podcast or put an ad on it or something like that, it would have to be something that I would use or do use, because it just feels too inauthentic for me to promote something that, I don't believe in.
Yeah, and at the same time, I do understand because I've spoken to creators who have said, "Hey, I've worked with this product and I'm not a huge fan of it." At the same time, I get that the game is tough. It's hard to make consistent income. So if I was in a position where I was struggling financially and those opportunities were brought my way, I'm not judging anyone who would say yes to them. And, thankfully I wasn't in that position, but who knows? I mean, when someone is struggling, then it causes us to have to decide, am I going to pay my mortgage this month, or am I going to, stand up for this drink that I'm not a huge fan of? And I think that's where it gets hard, right? I think a lot of creators in theory would love to only promote stuff that they like, but when the dollars are presented to you, I think that's the biggest dilemma of having to decide.
That's a really good point. And that's something that, as an unmonetized podcast that's really early, I don't have I'm not even thinking about that because I'm not relying on the podcast at the moment, but that's a really good point. And yeah, I can see how that would be a big decision factor. For me, I just feel like, unless it was something like kind of harmless that I just didn't like use or something, I would be less inclined to promote it if it was like something that I saw quite negatively, like energy drinks or something like that.
Totally.
I wonder, putting yourself out there online is such a risk. It's a risk not only financially, but it's a risk in terms of like your own well-being, because, even just like when we used to put comedy videos out, most of the people would send nice comments and say, haha, whatever, this is funny. Or even with the podcast, I sometimes get nice DMs or comments about it, but you also get mean comments. It's a very common, it's a very common thing, right? How do you deal with those comments? Are you reading all your comments? How are you interacting with your fans, especially if they're negative?
Yeah, I feel like there's different layers to it. Early on, I feel like the kind of the initiation of anyone pursuing content creation is you're going to do something that people are going to make fun of. I feel like it has to happen to you. People are going to say it's cringe. You're going to feel uncomfortable. And then pushing through that for me was the fact that in my head, I always saw, hey, this is going to be my career. So I have to do this. This is part of the game sort of thing. And back to leaning on people who support you. But yeah, it was a little bit discouraging, especially in the early days when you're just trying to put yourself out there and people put you down. But when people start out, I'm always like, that's just part of it. Just get the embarrassing thing out of the way. It's something that everyone goes through at some point, and you have to push through it. I think pushing through it is a theme that we've talked about throughout the podcast, I feel like. But then when it comes to negative comments, as you can imagine, they're all in Spanish, but if you go to translate them, a person who to everyone in Spain is American. When they hear me speak, they assume I'm from the United States. And for some reason that triggers them more than me being Canadian. So right out the bat, that's a trigger, and they think I'm in Spain messing with their precious dishes. So yeah, there's some negative comments of people saying like, you're ruining our culture, blah, blah, blah. And for me, it's just knowing that that's not my intention. as long as I think my intention is pure and has a positive spin to it, then for me, it doesn't really matter what people are saying in the comments section. I do read all the comments, but again, I think this is something that comes with just time. Like I genuinely, I feel bad for my parents to be honest, because they read all my comments and it like drives them crazy. And they like, how could they say that? And for me, I'm like, it doesn't even cross my mind because for me, I'm like a reminder. This is my career. I get to make content, talk about content with brands and get paid for it. And for me, I'm like, there's so many worse things that I could be doing that if this is what I have to deal with, then hey, I'll put up with it, sort of thing.
Yeah, in some way, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with getting cauterized and being having that tough exterior shell. Your parents have never probably had a big TikTok channel, and so they don't have that constant barrage coming at them that you have like built this layer of protection up against, right? So, yeah, I can see how that would be a weird a weird thing for them to deal with.
But I imagine it also depends on what your medium is because I feel like stand up, that's like one of the hardest, I feel like. Number one, making someone laugh in general is like a different level of criticism that I feel like versus like, hey, I'm making a wacky recipe. Like it doesn't affect me that personally. Whereas I feel like yourself, if you're doing stand up, whatever your joke is has some sort of a personal spin to it, or it's related to a story of family, or you thought deeper, more emotionally about it. I feel like would you say that that hits you a little bit more emotionally compared to maybe some of the other things you've done?
Yeah, when I was doing stand up, there were definitely times that I did well, but there were definitely times where I bombed horribly. And those times are incredibly were incredibly tough, especially at the beginning. Like I had done it for a few years, and like at the beginning, it was like 50-50. Like sometimes I would do well, sometimes I would do okay. And then I remember one show in particular that I did at a club that had a bit of an older audience, and I was like, I don't know, 21, and I was doing like homework jokes and stuff like that that just didn't land.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember just feeling totally dejected, and like someone in the audience bought me a beer because they felt so bad for me. And, so it does have like an emotional impact on you in that way. But then but the next show I was fine again. Like I got my next laugh and I was okay. Whereas it doesn't live forever on this online space that you can constantly go back and look at this mean comment. So I think it affects you in a different. It's just a different kind of feedback.
Yeah, that's true. At least it doesn't, I mean, unless someone's filming it, but for the most part, at least it's something you have to internalize and you don't have to go look at your profile every day. It's there to remind you, sort of thing. But I feel like it would hit me deeper just because it's more of a, I don't know, an attack on my character. I feel like if it's more of an emotional joke, maybe I could never be a stand-up comedian if you could tell by my attitude towards it. It's a whole art in itself that I feel like you really have to battle through.
Yeah, a lot of comedians who are putting their heart on the line with their jokes probably feel that way for sure. But in some way, like a lot of content creators are doing the same thing. You're just doing it in a different medium, right? You're putting a lot of time and work and heart into a piece of content that, if it flops or gets negative comments can also feel painful, right? And yeah, just the ability to deflect that and keep moving forward is something that you have to really build. It's just really weird to me how, like, I don't think I've ever left a negative comment on anything in my life. Like, I don't see the appeal of doing that. It's like if I don't like it, I just move on to the next thing. Like, I don't even know if I leave many positive comments. Maybe that's like a millennial thing, but it's like I just sort of move on to the next thing. Like, so yeah, that the whole premise of like just being mean to someone for trying to create something, it's just weird to me.
Yeah, I genuinely don't think I've met a successful person who's left or said anything negative to me. Anyone who's in any career path that has a level of success is always supportive of someone who's trying to pursue some sort of outside of the box idea, I feel like. So that's what I try to remind myself too, is people who are in the comments that are negative, they definitely have something internal wrong with them. Maybe they hate their job. This is their escapism. I'm helping them in some way get less frustrated with their life. So that's something too. I try to tell myself is this, it's not a reflection of me. It's very likely something that their day isn't going very well, and they want to just yell at the Canadian guy making weird dishes in Spain.
That's a really good perspective to have on it. That's probably helpful. You mentioned you have a lot of support from your community, friends, family, your fiance. Have you ever felt a degree of pressure from them when maybe early on when you were like, I'm going to do this weird thing that no one else is really doing? Was there ever a sense of like, hey, maybe you should just be an electrician instead? Like, was there any of that? And
Yeah.
then how did you like work through that?
Yeah. I mean, also, I believe you come from an Italian background.
Yes.
So my parents are both Italian as well. So culturally, anything in the creative space wasn't even considered a job from the beginning. Obviously, social media when we were kids didn't exist, but any form of television or media wasn't even an idea. It was always like be a lawyer, be a doctor, be a scientist, anything in that realm. So from the beginning, when I pursued anything related to media, it was kind of like a haha, make sure you're still studying, make sure you're still doing this sort of thing. And I don't think my parents really or family really took it seriously until it started to generate income, which I feel like is a common thing in this space. But I think that was always tough. That transition from this is a hobby to making this an actual career, because culturally we have these pressures. And then there's the different pressure of once you are taken seriously and they're on board, then they become so emotional to these next steps, almost more than me sometimes. If I'm like, auditioning for something new or talking to a new client that could be a huge opportunity, they're almost more invested than I am. I've tried to become desensitized to the outcomes because, as you know, things come and go, everything's up and down. But because they lack that experience, almost they have more of an emotional attachment. So I'm more worried about disappointing them than getting the actual gig. So it's interesting how these different expectations have changed. But yeah, it's also makes you realize kind of keeping them in check as well. And I think at the beginning, I always want to tell my loved ones every single little thing. Um, but I've tried to put some sort of a filter on that in order to manage that as well. So you're battling trying to make yourself feel good, but also not wanting to disappoint them for their own feelings.
Yeah, that's a lot to manage.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that's the bar then? Like, I guess I'm trying to figure out at what point does a creator who's, let's say I wanted to be a pizza influencer. At what point, I've made 100 videos. It's not popping off. At what point do you give up? Like, should you give up? Should you pivot? Is it money the sort of metric for whether it's successful or not? Like, at what point should you move on and try something else?
Ooh, that's a deep question. I feel like all I could do is compare it to my personal situation. And for me, the second I started treating content creation like a business, it made things a lot easier. Because when I switched from, hey, I'm trying to get a lot of views and attention to, okay, how can we make income with this? It actually got easier to measure because it was like, okay, what are the ways to make money with this? So we've talked about being an influencer, getting paid from brand deals, helping people with their different strategies, helping brands with their strategies. And once I kind of outlined, okay, these are all of the paths, it kind of eliminated the noise. Um, so I was never one to be like, this is not going to work. I feel like I was always super hard headed and it wasn't something I thought about. I don't know if that's the right advice for people. I was also like not thinking about the pressures of as you get older. I feel like if I was close to 40 pursuing this, and if I was still living with my parents and had all of these things, that's way more of a pressure than luckily I was doing this in university and I was not faced with the pressures of I want to get married, I want to have kids, I have all these other life distractions. So I have a lot of these conversations with people who do have those, but I don't have that currently at the level that I'm at. If that makes sense, I feel like I've progressed enough where it's sustainable. It's become a job that's full time, and I don't have those pressures. I don't live with my parents. I am able to afford kind of somewhat of a lifestyle and everything. So I don't know if there's a time to say I should quit, but I do think pivoting is important. When you outline these are the paths to making money, can I fit into one of them? The thing is I don't think we're reinventing the wheel. I think tons of people have done what we're describing. And I think we don't copy enough of other people's homework. A lot of people have laid out the blueprint of what it takes to be a creator full time or what it takes to make content for other brands. So stealing some of those strategies and making them your own is a great place to start.
Yeah, I think borrowing ideas and strategies and putting a little twist on them to make your own can be really helpful. I've certainly watched a lot of podcasts and have seen what I like and what I don't like about their podcasts and tried to implement things. And even when I started, it was like, I look back at some of my old episodes and I already cringe because I'm like, oh my God, I made this mistake or should have done this or this intro was bad or whatever. And it's a progression. It'll hopefully keep getting better. And, that's all you can really ask for. And
Yeah, and I think a little bit of stubbornness is what everyone who's had some level of success has. You need that, I think. Um, but yeah, it's hard to, talk on the point of as you get older and have these different obstacles, like if you're, we're saying close to 40 and have kids and all this stuff. But I do think you kind of also know. I think if you're honest with yourself, you really do know, okay, this is working or it's not working. I think it's hard to have the vision to know like, should I quit? Because that's such a hard thing to ask yourself. But if something's not working in this, at least the content world, I'm a huge fan of do something else. Because I've had these runs of this style of video is working, it's working, and then it's flat. All of a sudden, it's just not hitting. That hook that was always generating, all of a sudden has gone flat. And for me, my strategy is always do something super random, super different that you haven't done in terms of the structure of the video. And that always kind of shakes things up. So whenever I'm flat on organic views or things aren't going well, I'm always like, how can we really change things up? And I feel like in life in general, that sort of thing has worked for me. Like if I lost a client or clients weren't coming in, I'm just like, how can I do something really random? Let's go to this event or let's go somewhere I usually wouldn't go. And it's funny how sometimes you put yourself out there, you network or you go somewhere you shouldn't have been and it turns into something good. Um, that's always somewhat worked for me.
yeah, constantly iterating, trying new things, following trends. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do. I guess for me, it's like, I'm on episode 20 of the podcast. I have 2,000 subscribers, but that's also from some of the comedy stuff I did. It's quite small for me, right? So I guess like for me, I just want to keep doing it no matter what. Like I just want to keep putting it out. I know that may be unrealistic and you can burn out and everything, but like, I don't know, I could see episode 500 from where I am now. And yeah, I don't know. Hopefully between now and then, a few more people watch, but if they don't, I think will still make episode 500, you know?
Yeah, I think the addicting thing for podcast is you always get to have a new personality you get to connect with. And if you're a people person, which I feel like you are, that's the addicting part is you get to have a conversation with someone. Even if you and I went for a beer sometime, I don't think it would be the same conversation. It's really a different environment. It's not as intimate to be like, hey, like when are some times you've struggled emotionally with your career? Just what had
Yeah,
happened, right?
right.
So I see that. I see how the podcast world is such a great opportunity for connection.
It is. It's also incredibly saturated. I mean, everyone has a podcast now, and I guess maybe I can borrow your digital strategist brain for a second. If you had any advice for
Totally.
me, what would you say?
I would say you have the advantage of all these different personalities coming on your show. So number one, I think you've done a great job with creating a great environment for the guests that they want to support you. I think that's number one is, hey, the guests want to support you. That's number one. And if they have even 100 followers, even if they share a story, that's a win for you. Those are people who probably wouldn't have seen it. And then clips. I think what's great about the long form is being able to chop it up, um, and thinking of clips that relate to current events or current topics that might appear like they're related to what's trending, but maybe you weren't talking about that specifically. So without us having to go into, hey, what's the latest in politics? Maybe we're talking about struggle or the clip we talked about the US, for example, that's really trending in the news. Leading with that as a hook, trying to tap into what's trending and then chopping that up. But I think as many short form clips as you can on Instagram and TikTok is going to be a way to tap in.
Yeah, thanks. That's good advice. And just from having created some shorts, it's an art form in and of itself. I mean, creating the short, creating the hook, making it compelling in some way. What's really interesting metric on YouTube is you can see the swipe away rate. And so you can tell very quickly how a video is going to do. If I think it's like 50 to 70% means that it's going to do well. Anything under that suggests that more than 50 to 70% of people are swiping away and not watching it. And so then you have to think, okay, well, why are they swiping away? What can get them to stay there? And so just iterating and trying different things. I mean, it's a ton of work, but it's definitely a way to get yourself out there for any creative. And not just podcasts. I mean, you see a lot of artists making shorts, a lot of comedians putting their jokes as shorts. So it's a really good way to get yourself out there because of the organic reach that you can get.
Absolutely. I think also something I would say, I'm also thinking of because I really want to do a podcast again, and something that I would plan on doing is having some sort of hooks that I know I'm going to say for a video. So I would say them in the middle of it. Like, let's say we're talking about, I don't know, I'm talking to a creator about a Valencian dish and be like, that's what I can't stand about Valencia. Like, or you know what I mean? So I know I'm going to say this. That'll be the lead of a clip. That'll be a hook and we'll bait people to think we're about to say this wacky thing about Valencia. But really, it actually leads to whatever we actually talk about. So I would probably pre plan some of my hooks so that it could lead into a conversation with someone. And then I'm like, okay, I know I have these five kind of lead conversations from this podcast at least. And then anything we talk about extra is just gravy on top of it.
Cool. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I sort of plan, I do a lot of research on my guests and I sort of plan the questions that I'm going to ask, but I never thought of it in that sort of hook format. That's really interesting. Well, Dre, thank you so much for doing this. It's been great catching up with you. I like to end the podcast by asking about a time you stepped outside of your comfort zone and how that shaped your life. Does anything come to mind?
Yeah. I feel like for me, I'm trying to relate it to content. When I first had somewhat of a successful video here in Spain, they asked me to do like a local TV interview in Spanish. And I had no business in Spanish. My Spanish was not good enough to be doing that interview. But I just said yes. And I was like, I'm just going to wing it. And I'm going to remind them I'm from Stony Creek if they say you can't speak Spanish. Um, and it worked. And I'm happy I did it. Looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I embarrassed myself. But I would say that was a huge motivator for me to learn more Spanish. And I feel like it eventually led to more opportunities just because I kind of put myself into that very embarrassing, awkward situation.
Hey, you got to take a risk. You got to take a risk to get the payoff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it works. I think it's putting yourself in an uncomfortable position eventually does lead to something good.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Dre, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find your content?
Yeah, you can find all my content at DrePaoOfficial, or DrePao.com has all the links to my stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Dre.
Thanks so much.